some people and let them know on live streaming? Or say something on their website? Or not the website, the Facebook page.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our June 21st Planning Commission meeting. And before we really get underway, I'm going to read a statement from Okay. This is the meeting of Spring Lake Township Planning Commission. The duties of the Planning Commission are to consider matters of long-range planning as well as questions of zoning. Thus, the Planning Commission functions as a planning commission as well as a zoning board. In its capacity as a zoning board, it makes recommendations to the Spring Lake Township Board. The final responsibility for any zoning amendment to the zoning ordinance is solely in the hands of the Spring Lake Township Board. So with that, roll call, we have one person.
In other words, we need to shut up, right?
Yes.
Right. I don't think so.
Adoption of agenda.
If noted as any further additions, I move we adopt the agenda as written.
We have motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, adoption of the May 17th meeting.
There was one change I wanted to know. It was just a little typo.
We can't hear you.
I just want to correct the typo in the minutes from the today.
Okay, so was that a motion?
So then I would motion to accept the correction.
Okay, we have a motion. Support. And support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, the next section, section D on our agenda, and that is for general public comment. And that is going to be for items on the agenda or not on the agenda. So it is a free mic, and we would like to keep comments to 3 minutes if we would like to participate. And if you could, when you get up here, please state your name and address.
I am Kira Yuki at 16192 first want to say thank you. I came to the meeting last month and stayed at the very end, learned a lot, seeing how this process looks like you guys are learning as you're going, it appears. And so same as we are doing as ourselves as the public coming into this situation. I guess I want to make a couple of thoughts. One is when I see that Eastbrook is coming in to speak again tonight, as we guys talked about it in the meeting. I know that public hearing is closed, but if there's something that's stated by Eastbrook and there's comments that need to be followed up, how is that it would be able to be presented by us as a residents to get back to the committee for consideration? Okay, so that's one of my questions. I'd like to know how we get that information to you, and then how do we get those answers back since public hearing is closed and we don't have an opportunity to reciprocate. And then, as with, I noticed a document that was shared with me that Lucas provided a memorandum that was done on June 12th on the rezoning request by PS Properties. And he did kind of a summary, which is very nice. But under the public hearing summary, I see that there's mainly most of the comments, almost all comments, were opposed about having this process move forward. When does the committee, or when does the board start to listen to the residents? Now, maybe this is not enough, but I know we also presented some additional signatures. And when does those type of feedback you receive from the committee, or from your residents who left the board in at least, who then I believe, here's Steve commends this committee, when do you start to listen to the residents about what's happening? I mean, I know I see the responses here, but do the comments, when people say they're opposing something or you're receiving information, I see the refusal. When we're saying that we're not agreement with what's happening, or we're asking for this not to be considered, what is our opinion being taken into consideration? So I guess that's the question I have. And I'm not here to debate things. I'm just asking to understand through this process. It wasn't really explained at the last meeting. So I need to understand those two particular questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a nice evening.
Yep. Thank you, Carrie.
Hi, my name is Mike Johnson, and I live in Spring Lake Township, not too far from the B5 development.
Is that Mike Johnson?
Yes.
What was your address?
Yeah, 16162 Coventry Lane. So, probably similar to what Carrie was saying too. I guess that to me, I'm struggling a little bit. So maybe it's more, again, at what point is there maybe a little bit better understanding of what this, it feels a little bit awkward the way this has kind of all landed over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of this change in the future master plan and other things that were brought forward and proposed. And it feels much more, as a former business person, now retired, we usually had an approach to things which was, hey, we want to be able to build out more of the land, increase property taxes. There's some approach to it that would people would grasp, would understand. And I don't see any of that. To me, what would cause somebody to, in this case, to use I consider more of an administrative procedure process that you refer to as leapfrogging. So therefore, all of a sudden, as opposed to the 100 acres that was part of the whole, that all of a sudden it's 450. And it's because of something.
Lucas.
I mean, I get the concept, but why in the world would you ever use it unless, again, so I'm just saying, those types of questions are just not clear. And I think as a planning board, it's something that you should be able to provide to us so that what we do is understand what is it that's really driving this. Otherwise, we're left with conspiracy theories about P5 being in the dark at night with members of this board or that Lucas has been coming up with. Right? That's all. Thank you, guys.
Hi, my name is Judy Thompson, and I live at 270 South Lake Avenue in Spring Lake Village. I affect me in any way. But I thought I'd listen to what was going on. And then a couple of weeks ago, I found out that the Northwest Ottawa Water Authority is asking people only to sprinkle the lawns on certain days, and they're closing the splash pad at certain hours in order to conserve water, or we're going to lose pressure in our houses and in the local businesses. And I'm thinking, okay, so if they build 100 houses, is that going to be another 100 sprinkler systems, 200 plus bathrooms? And what's going to happen to the water pressure then? Are we all going to suffer this? Because I live in the Northwest Ottawa Water Authority, not in the township, but in the village. And the other thing I wondered about is, are the construction trucks going to be allowed to go over Smith's Bridge? I do use Smith's Bridge on a regular occurrence, and I know it's checked every 6 months to make sure it's still sound. But the regular cars, saloons and things going over it are not going to make very much difference to it, but construction traffic would. And are we going to have more checks on it, or are we just going to ban the construction traffic, or are they just going to be able to go over at 1,000 trucks a week or whatever it is? Thank you.
We really don't give a shit.
Good evening, Mark Schroeder, 18158 Local. I sent a letter to the board today, and I thought I'd go ahead and read it so others in the audience could understand what we said. As concerned citizens of the township, we have a very significant concern that the board does not seem to be following the wishes of the constituents. In speaking with board members, they have clearly stated that the response to the proposal has been overwhelmingly negative and against the zoning request. In fact, we are told by the chairman that the response against the rezoning has been tremendous, and with the exception of East Brook Homes, almost zero support for rezoning. It's extremely perplexing then why the board has seemed to ignore the wishes of the township residents. For the vast majority of residents, there is a feeling that the original change to the master plan was pushed through with little or no notice to the citizens, and only done so to the benefit of Eastbrook. There was little opportunity for residents to give input and let their wishes be known on this issue. Once the situation was known to the public, there's been a significant outpouring of opposition to the rezoning, and the citizens have made their opposition to this change known in their attendance to the last 3 board meetings, as well as yard signs, recall committee letters, and emails. The reasons for the opposition have been clearly laid out: loss of rural character, school overcrowding, traffic issues, groundwater drainage issues, wetland issues, overdevelopment, and additional burden on the township to maintain the development's infrastructure and the change in the basic character of the township. In fact, the only reason given to support the change, besides benefiting Eastbrook, seems to be that the water and sewage systems could support it, though that was certainly questioned just recently. This seems like a strange adjustment. Yet, in light of the residents' opposition, there appears to be reluctance on the board to respond to their wishes. The board is in place to run the township in accordance with the residents' wishes, but in this case, the board continuously delaying acting in accordance with those wishes. At the last meeting on May 17th, the board gave the populace the impression that the rezoning was going to be addressed on this meeting, but I get the impression from the agenda that that is not the case. As constituents, we demand that the board address the rezoning in accordance with the residents' wishes and vote this in. And there's multiple signatures which I pass on to you. All right, thank you.
I am Michael Curras, I'm a resident of the township at 18246 West Creek Lane. The township has a land use master plan which should guide, among other things, the way it processes requests for zoning changes. The master plan was updated last year and reflects inputs gathered from the township's residents. And perhaps the most significant takeaway from that survey is that the township residents gave their highest priority to preserving the agricultural and low-density residential areas within the township. The master plan was updated last year to reflect this preference, even suggesting the possibility of a net shift in the next few years to more land zoned for agricultural and low-density residential use. Way to go, commission, way to go, board. But the master plan by itself changes nothing. It is only when the specific change to current zoning is received by the township that the possibility of an actual change in township zoning moves toward reality. Currently, the Planning Commission and the board focus on the merits of an individual's request to a zoning change and modify, or not, only the zoning applicable to the particular parcels of land covered by the individual's request. Consideration does not usually extend much beyond those particular parcels. So here's the first part of my suggestion to the Commission. If a rezoning request would result in zoning that decreases the land actually available for agricultural and low-density residential use, and if that request is to be granted, then land currently zoned for higher residential densities should also be reduced by an equal or greater amount, in line with the intent embodied in the master plan. Let me repeat that. When actual zoning changes are going to be recommended by the Commission, they should be consistent with the overall intent of the master plan for the township as a whole, not just for specific parcels of interest to one or a few individuals. So how to do that? In such a case, when a zoning change is going to be made that satisfies an individual's specific request, as well as the township's preference. Am I running out of time? Okay. I will stop.
Casey with grade 16325 West Willow. The same people that packed Barber School still feel the same way. We don't want it. The same people that met here a few months ago don't want it. The same people here tonight don't want it. Your community has continued to tell you the way that we feel about this, and we need you to listen. That's your job. Quite frankly, you're supposed to listen to your community, not just Lucas Hill and his in the dark community. Listen to your community. They are. They are, for their community, for what they're doing. So, it is. This is what we would like. We would like you to listen to us. Okay, we've been here month after month after month, waiting for you guys to listen to us and to deny this, and it continues to be pushed out. And all I'm going to say is if you're waiting the wait out, if you're waiting for us to give up, we're not. We're not going anywhere. We will not. We'll be there at the next step, we'll be there at the next one, we'll be there at the next one. We don't want this community in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
So, showing appreciation at the end, let's go with that, but let's show some respect for us trying to get the intent of the person's trying asking for cooperation.
Hi, I'm Amalia Ziegler. I live at 18282 Christina.
We can't hear you.
Okay, I'm Amalia Ziegler. I live at 18282 Christina Court. I hate public speaking, but I hate this more. I wrote you guys an email last week inviting you to drive through an area to see the opposition of the rezone loud and clear for banners and yard signs. I hope you did that. I'm really proud of helping coordinate that. While you were out, perhaps you saw the many houses that are out for sale because the people do not have faith in the township to do the right thing. It's really sad. That's all I have to say about that. I also want to note that in Lucas's staff review memo, he gave a number of recommendations. He did not list rural residential, and that is an option for you guys. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Walborn. I live at 15085 Hickory Street, and my understanding is that master plan calls out for agricultural zones. I'm not sure if it's in the recommendation in the master plan or if it's in an ordinance, that if you're going to rezone agricultural land to residential land, that there has to not be an agricultural use for it. And I believe that there are people who are interested in keeping this as an agricultural use and are interested in doing farming. So I just ask that you please consider that. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Pettix, 16448 Van Wagner Road. First of all, I've been in the building trades for 42 years, my whole life. And one of the licenses I have is a water operator's license. So that in the beginning, the first meeting, they passed out some workup that the engineer did about the water and the sewer and everything. That was only on the first 100 acres, not on the full 250 that's changed. So, to me, at the very least, I mean, we're already on water restrictions. We have to go back and have that redone. And for anybody to walk up here and demand our respect, you have to earn it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dale Uthie. My address is 16192 Old Orchard Drive, Township. I just had a couple concerns from last meeting we had, and I'd just like to hopefully get addressed tonight by East Brook. One was how much fill soil was actually going to be brought in for this project. We're talking about the different topography of the soil for water runoff, and that was one concern I had. Second was the water and sewer system, which was brought up several times, not only with capacity, but who will be in charge 15, 20 years from now as this development goes on for maintaining that, as along with the roads and the new schools, then if we just keep raising the taxes to the property owners. It doesn't seem that this development is needed. I don't know the phrase that, not needed. We need housing, I understand that, but the density is what my concern is right now. So, thank you.
Rodney Bell. I live at Van Wagner, 18425. My concern is the water. We lived there for 25 years. Most of the water from the property that you're talking about goes in my backyard. I've had Eagle come to me in the last 12 months. They're wanting to redo the whole drainage behind our house, and I specifically asked them, what's going to happen if this goes through? You don't have to worry. They got to do the 100-year flood, whatever it is. But in June of 21, now remember, we've been there 25 years, was the first time ever that the water in the new culvert that they put under West Spring Lake Road would not handle the water. We had water back all the way up to almost to our bottom slide of the last road.
Such a slide.
And my concern is, has anyone here got any type of recommendation? I deal with farmers for 40 years. Blueberries are 80 to 90% water. That field is like one great big sponge. And now you're talking about taking it out. You're going to put houses in there. You're going to put driveways, roads. Where's the water going to go?
Yep, exactly.
You're taking out the sponge. Now you're creating way less ground for the water to absorb into.
Yeah.
I hope that the board has definitely seen the proposal and has addressed that. Thank you.
Nope. That's your last thing. That's Harry Duke.
Tom Spellman, 18049 Global Road, Spring Lake.
Lord.
Just a few comments. We have a lot of people here that are concerned. We are very concerned with the densities that we go. I'm looking at the note here, we're going to go from R2 to an R4. The citizens of Spring Lake want a community that doesn't look like parking. There always a problem. All this stuff. How do you do homes and housing? We are voters. I want you to understand that we do not want this. And if we don't, I'm sure that come election time, if the township board doesn't listen to the board, they don't listen to what we want, then we will change things so that they will listen. And you have a lot of people here that are upset. I have a lot of people in there that you're talking about, 500, 600 people. That will change an election.
Yep. Get rid of these guys. Get rid of every one of them, especially that one.
I don't think I used my minutes up, so I thought I grabbed one for the podcast. So, something I thought about a couple weeks ago when we were putting some things together, and as a planning commission, you guys are the right ones to ask this question to. As we're looking at our community, we're not a village, we're not a city, we're a township. But what is the image that we have as our township? If you think about it, you think of the village, you can actually take a picture, you can put it online, and you can identify that as the village of Spring Lake. Same thing for the city of Grandview. You can do the same thing for other communities. But when you're starting to think about pictures like what represents Spring Lake Township, what comes to your mind? My first thing is industrial. Then it was blueberry fields. Then it was some houses. And then it was Jerusalem Bay Bridge. What is it that we are trying to depict what Spring Lake represents? So if you could tell me that comes to your mind that you could put, if we have with our Spring Lake Township website, we have our township hall, but that's a shared hall. What do we really have? And honestly, now we have Dollar General as our entryway and 104. So I guess as you're planning, just not too much of this, I mean, as you're going forward, can you please think about those type of questions to yourself as you guys are approving and looking at things as a bigger picture? What are we looking to represent as Spring Lake Township? How can we make this even better than we already are? And how do we make this look better? this is Spring Lake Township. So I guess that's something I want you guys to think about if you don't mind. So thank you.
Molly Roystein, 18110-168 Avenue. I've spoken to you many times, and the last couple of times, you've mentioned that this has not been voted on. And I came here this evening, I wasn't even going to speak this evening. I have a very open mind about this. I'm still against this development, but it hasn't been voted on. The only thing that really, I think, makes me a little bit, it really got me, is seeing all of these photos up here as though this has already been determined. This shows that this is an advertisement. That's how this feels to me.
Yep.
I have been in architecture for 20 years. This is what I do when I go and go to a community event, engagement. This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. I bring this, and this is how I talk to community members when I'm trying to get them to understand what we're going to bring to the community. I do this for a living. And so when I walked in and I saw this, this is what this is showing me. This is what we're bringing to your community as this has already been determined. And that's what that spoke to me when I walked in here. I wanted to come in here with an open mind. And that's not how I feel anymore. Thanks.
That asshole's bored. That's Latch.
How you doing, John Potter, 16395 West Willow? I do, and it's something really big in this.
Could you repeat that, sir? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could you repeat your name?
Donald Potter, 16395 West Willow Drive. I grew up in Muskegon, I spent my career in Madison, Detroit, and retired back here 8 years ago. And I've been in the healthcare field, so I'm kind of new to the zoning stuff. But what I understand is transpired here, they told me it's common practice that these developers will buy up a parcel of land before it's rezoned, and then pressure to get it rezoned so they can build on it. I always thought that you got to rezone first, then you acquire the land, then you build on it. But I drive down Van Wagon Road, and I'm told that Eastbrook owns this land, the permits have been made. If I'm wrong, my thesis is wrong. So I drive down Van Wagon, and I see street going on the blueberries. Somebody's still farming that land. It's the Eastbrook. But they do a good job. Deny the process and let them continue.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We don't need to close, we just declare public comment period is over. There are a lot of misconceptions about the entire process. I think we ought to at least address those. You could tell me, it's your meeting, you tell me when you'd like to address those, but I think there's a tremendous misunderstanding of the planning commission, not the township board. This is not the township board, and these aren't elected people, so, if you're misunderstanding that point, you ought to have that cleared up. But anyway, there's a misunderstanding of the planning commission's role, the process, the procedures, what we have to consider. We need to address that at some point because it would help the people to at least have a rudimentary understanding of what we're doing here. If you could do that right now, because we're going to be moving into I think it's first of all important to understand that the fact that the Township Planning Commission hasn't just voted this down,
because the majority of comments, 50 or 60 people out of 13,000 people living in the township, are opposed to this. It should not be surprising. We are not allowed, as a planning commission operating under the Michigan zoning
God.
to reject a rezoning application because most people oppose it.
Oh
That's
my
not
God.
You timing me?
Yeah, let's time 'em.
Thank you. That's not a legal position for us to take and have defensible. If we would reject this rezoning on that basis, we'd be taken to court and we would lose, and all of these people would be unhappy. Any rezoning is not a popularity contest. It is to hear comments from the public about the various factors in the zoning ordinance that we are called to consider in determining whether or not to grant a rezoning. It is not a popularity contest.
The master plan should not have been changed.
The Planning Commission hasn't just summarily voted this down doesn't indicate that the Planning Commission isn't listening. And people need to understand that. And I understand that when the procedure is unclear, there can be these conspiracy theories that start to foment, and that's very unfortunate because it's being done by people who really don't understand the process.
Why was the master plan changed?
What was done with the master plan was done fully in compliance with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. Public hearings were held as required, full notices were given, and in fact, in that planning process, the township reduced the number of acres available for more intense development. Significantly reduced the number of acres available for R2 development. So to say that the Planning Commission didn't listen to the people, to the public, would be wrong, because in fact the Planning Commission reacted to what the people said they wanted.
Everybody's saying you're wrong.
To this rezoning application, there have been 2 public hearings.
It's ridiculous.
And comment taken tonight without any limitation. The Planning Commission is bending over backwards to take public comment and will eventually make a decision or recommendation to the Planning Commission or the Township Board. There was a question about Eastwood. Number one, the pictures that are up here are from the applicant. The applicant paid money to ask for the rezoning. That's the right of every applicant coming before the Planning Commission. We don't reject people out of hand and say, we're not going to take your money, we won't listen to your application. That would, again, be a violation of the law. If the applicant wants to put pictures up to support its position, that's the applicant's right. It's also the applicant's right to respond and make its presentation to the Planning Commission after all the public comments are in, so that the applicant has the chance to respond to what comments have been made by the public. We do not have a continuing ping pong game where, well, now that the applicant is speaking, now we've spoken, now we go back to the public, and then we allow the applicant to respond to the public. We'll never get done. So we're going to comply with the law, we're going to allow due process, and we're going to proceed in that manner.
Fuck you, basically.
Excuse me,
You're not being
No,
recognized.
you may not. You may not. You may not. You may not, sir. You need to sit down.
Oh my
You need to sit
God.
down. The chair is running this meeting.
You're not being recognized.
Holy shit.
With the comments about fill and the comments about drainage are comments that would pertain to an actual development. If at some point the property is rezoned, and if at some point the development application is brought to you, you will have many detailed questions to ask about drainage, fill, and all kinds of other issues. Those are not appropriate issues to consider with regard to rezoning. With regard to zoning, we look at the factors in the zoning ordinance, and we will make a decision based upon all the information that is submitted from the public and from the applicant and from our own knowledge of the procedure, and then make a recommendation to the township board, and then the township board will make a decision. And to say that because we haven't just rejected the plan already, therefore, we're in the pockets of the developer, or it's an unfair process, is a misreading of the situation and a very unfair approach to take with regard to the planning commission.
Yeah, well, who cares? You're not particularly caring about us.
Okay, now.
What a tirade. What a fucking tirade.
Good evening, James Kruger, 3251 Rainbow Road, Cooper Township. Caleb and I are here tonight.
I don't know if you raise the mic up or.
Is that better?
We have to be so close to these mics.
Without breaking it. There we go. Sure. James Kruger, 3251 Rainbow Road, Cooper Township. Sorry. We're working with the current owners of two parcels that are located in the far northeast section of the township, directly across from Mobex Industrial Castings and Johnson Auto, and adjacent to the mobile home park that is in that same area. Mobile home park is currently, I believe, are 4 residential. The properties that we are looking at are currently R2 residential. We're asking that those be considered zone R4. Just as future scope, we are considering if it would be rezoned R4 to build 4 level complexes. On the last page of the handout, most you have, you kind of see a general idea of what they would look like. And then exactly that, but that's kind of what we're looking at. 2 to 4 bedroom. I'm a licensed builder and I'm also a realtor. So from a real estate standpoint, looking at that area to be single family homes, being across from the castings plant, kind of a tough sell in my opinion. It's not a super busy road, but Apple Drive can have some good traffic on it. For being in a fourplex rental community, I think it would be applicable there. Not as, I guess not, it's a transitional area, I guess. There's some NEC across the way. And it's NEC, commercial, neighborhood commercial across the way. Johnson houses, and then there's the bridge that goes into the township. On the east side, I believe the township owns that property as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a gravel pit or something back on there. There's virtually no single family residential in that area at all, up until you get across closer to the bridge.
Should we, in considering the possible make a zone change, and specifically what you're proposing, how many fourplexes are you considering building?
We would like to put 5 to 8, depending on how we can lay it out in there. There'll be a retention pond, and we're going to build a berm, and assuming everything is along the road, with trees to kind of shelter from the retention pond.
When they start, this book starts with their movie. I'm gonna walk out. I don't want to see it. But would you mind just continuing to do this? And then I'll go back in.
consider one if possible. I don't know that it would be a good idea in the location, just because it makes it in the country homes, and it's right across from the boundaries.
I'd like to caution that this is not a proposal for building, this is not a site plan review facility. I think all of those items will be addressed in the site plan review.
I think it makes a nice transition. Possibly the R1 there to go from the right there on down left, right on the right. So I think it's.
Okay, so at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. So anybody wishing to come up and speak concerning this development, please do so. Okay, nobody wishes to speak. I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Motion made.
Motion, your support. Motion and support. All those in can't hear me. I'm going to get a microphone. Public hearing is closed. So as we consider this rezoning, I would like to look at individual points in which the planning commission must base their recommendation upon. So what we'll do is run through these, we'll listen to staff comment, we'll make our own comments, and then I would like to come up with consensus to some degree on each point before we move on. Okay, so the first criteria is whether there are change conditions in the community that have occurred since the property was originally zoned, warranting the zoning request. Okay, so staff comment is if right-of-way issues have been established around this parcel that might be considered detrimental to a residential use. Oftentimes, a high-density use can provide a good transition for buffer between commercial, industrial, and lower density uses. So that's common from staff. To hear comments or is this something that would
I'd just like to comment here that more affordable housing,
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
It's been clear that we need more housing. We realize we have so much more affordable housing. This lends the possibility of that happening. So I think the conditions have changed. That Spring Lake Township in West Michigan continues to grow in an incredible rate. I think it makes that such a change in conditions for speaking about it. I think it's a rational.
At an incredible rate, people must be buying the houses already. There's tons of houses available.
Argue this point, or will we reach consensus? Consensus?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to read through these. You were, okay, you were hinting at me, and I wasn't sure if you wanted me to read.
Dear God.
Item B, the review criteria for rezoning is whether the property is reasonably able to be used as zone and whether the property can be reasonably used under the proposed zoning. Staff comment is paragraph B. It is questionable if the property can be reasonably used as zone given the surrounding land uses. One might be willing to rent a home in this location, but not necessarily interested in owning one. R4 might also offer the possibility for some affordable housing.
Holy, wait, they're talking about the place on that. They're talking about 2 houses on that. Are you sure? Yes. It's okay, I know that is, but it's when you go
Letter
to
C,
report.
whether there are other areas of the community that are better suited and planned.
They're talking about our result.
Staff comment. This is a great area for high quality multifamily development.
Okay.
The only other R4 area is along 174th Ave, the 174th Ave corridor, which is quite limited at a similar setting.
I think it's interesting that corridor along 174, now we just had 8 new duplex go up, and there's a quadplex going up.
More duplexes are going
More
in.
duplex going in, absolutely.
So I think that demand is there, that's for sure.
We have consensus.
These people are idiots. These people are
Whether the
idiots.
rezoning is consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map of the Spring Lake Township master plan. Staff comment, the proposed rezoning is not consistent with the master plan, but the parcels are located in a transitional area with a variety of uses. The master plan is a guide for the township, and strict adherence is not always necessary. So that comment might be somewhat concerning. I did have a discussion with Mr. Bolchi
What he
about
just
that.
said was,
Given the nature of the request, we feel that, it's not consistent. There's just a number of different uses that are happening in that space. So some flexibility.
so if they want to muck with the master plan, that's fine, but nobody else can. Jesus Christ. But you notice these people had to come and ask for the rezoning.
Letter G, whether the rezoning is compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features given uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. Staff comment is that other developments in the area have been installed successfully. The site does not appear to have any limiting features.
Consensus? Please.
Letter F, whether the property is compatible with all of the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district and with the surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, and infrastructure. Staff comment, the proposed zone district would be compatible with the area and surrounding land uses.
They think there's only 50 of us. This part actually makes sense to me.
Multifamily, right on the road, line of sight for traffic safety, pulling,
There's a people who are in and all that kind of stuff.
this is the building permit and county road
Got it.
commission's recommendations for safety. That was the only thing that I was in the capacity of the area for the roads, I think it was very natural.
I think there's available water and sewer that is available for that site as well. Letter G, I guess in the next one, whether there is capacity of township infrastructure and services sufficient to accommodate the uses permitted in the requested district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the township or its residents. Staff comments on municipal utilities are also available to protect groundwater quality. No other concerns are noted.
Barry, you got consensus?
Could we just talk for just a second about, we're talking about capacity of infrastructure, including water, public water capacity.
Here we go. Here we go.
I think it'd be worthwhile at least addressing that. I don't think anyone here who is connected to public water would want to fund a public water system that would fully handle the driest of dry summers. We're going to handle 90% of the time.
He's an ass.
There are times when a dry summer will happen and voluntary compliance will be requested to ask people to conserve water. That's not an indication that, oh my my goodness, our public water system is in trouble, that's an indication that engineers plan for the majority of the time and try to keep costs to a minimum, and do not plan
This
for the
guy.
worst case scenario and ask the public to pick up the tab for that.
But we pick
So I
up
think
the
that's
tab
important to
for us.
keep in mind.
That's a lot.
H,
Blah, blah.
whether there is capacity of the street system to safely and efficiently accommodate the expected traffic generated by uses permitted in the requested zoning district. Staff comment is Apple Drive is a primary road according to the Ottawa County Road Commission. No concerns are anticipated with the development of this size. I guess I'd clarify that statement for rezoning 3 acre parcel. We're not really proposed development at this time.
Consensus on this item?
Just a side note on H2 is that the, when we work together with our staff and we meet as a group, with our DPW, fire department, township manager, and we're looking at that area with the manufactured home community to the north, and about pedestrian access to that space, because there's a lot of movement in there, and Apple Drive going up into food court.
This little empire is falling.
Thinking about if this does come to fruition, how we might
How sad is
that
that for him?
situation in that triangular space. So,
I want to know his birthday. Which one?
so letter I, whether the rezoning would support the rational and
That'd be interesting,
development
wouldn't it?
pattern, keeping potential
We should get
development
together and do
existing
that.
development and
I don't have anybody to talk
avoiding
astrology to
leapfrog
anymore.
type development. Staff comments of developments exist around this property as to other supportive elements, including parks, bike paths, and the village of Freeport.
All right, last item, we have no consensus. All right. What the board has been through our criteria for decision making. We have consensus on each item. So based upon this consensus, part of the word,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add one more item here, Mr. Bolgi, if you want to
God,
jump
here we
in
go.
as well. I provided 2 sample motions for you to consider. A third one would be to request a resolution from Mr. Bolgi, with the ordinance, the official ordinance, to consider back in the next meeting in July, if that's an action we want to take. So I just want to make sure that that's an option. I felt that this was a fairly simple request, and didn't necessarily need to go in that direction. Just to put that out there.
I concur with Mr. Hill. I think that given the lack of opposition, the lack of public comment at all, and the consensus we all have with his memo, I could do a formal resolution for you. I don't think it's necessary.
So I'm going to make a motion to recommend approval to the township board to rezoning parcel 70.03.01.200-2009 and 70-03-01-200-204 as requested from R2 medium density to R4 densities that meets the review requirements set forth in section 109B7 of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, motion.
I'll support.
Yeah, they'll support anything with heavy duty density. Does anyone against?
Yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Myself? Yes. Passes unanimously.
I can't imagine it ever would not. I can't imagine it ever would not. Bunch of sheep.
Gentlemen,
So they're gonna get up here and do a little presentation again.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
I'm gonna leave them when that happens.
Thank you. I'm Mick McGraw, and here with Mike McGraw and Andy Crew.
There you go.
Sorry, Mick McGraw with Eastbrook Homes. I'm here with Michael McGraw with Eastbrook Homes, and Don DeGroot from Excellent Engineering. And Michael's going to take most of this tonight, just tune up some things back there. But I just want to say thank you. Also to say thank you to the people who are here tonight. We've had the 2 meetings to listen, and actually the 3rd meeting tonight, and that's certainly helpful for us to hear the comments. We hope we can address those that have been made over the last 2 meetings, and just give you an idea of what we are thinking of as we approach this project and this community. So with that, still moving on. So we'll be ready in just a minute as soon as we get this. What Michael's going to go through is coming up here. It's just, first of all, just 2 minutes of what do we do and thoughts that we have. None of these are perfect examples of what might happen on this site. We give you examples of things that we've done in Spring Lake Township and other various townships and cities throughout West Michigan. So I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. Right here. Is that good? Okay. I actually want to start with just a general comment to everybody here. I've got a family, I've got kids. You guys all have jobs that you do. I happen to be in the business of providing housing. We don't create the demand for that housing. We do try to help meet the need that exists, which is ever growing. And there's only certain places where that need can be met in every township. There's only a few things that really guide where we can develop property. The roadmap is truly in every township is the master plan and the accompanying land use plan. And that's really all we have to go on. The zoning is certainly the next step. There was a question about why do you buy property that's not zoned yet. We don't buy property that doesn't have the appropriate land use that we're looking for. We don't go to the fringes of the township and buy property that's on the outskirts and doesn't have access to infrastructure that we know is needed to support housing. We focus our efforts on finding property that is in the path of development and has an appropriate land use designation. So thought I'd start with that. As my dad said, we appreciate the feedback and the opportunity to listen. And I just thought there was a number of comments related to product and housing type. So I felt flipping through these pictures, and I'm not going to stop at each one, but they would just give you some sense of what we've done in other places with respect to entryways, some community features, and then also some exterior and interior photos of some representative home types that we've built. And that we would envision doing in this area. Pick some pond photos because these properties will certainly require a pond. There were some comments with respect to price points, and as the Housing Next, I don't know if you saw their study, there's a need for housing at all price points. We envision this project is going to be probably in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $800,000. There were comments about where this is going to be, and so I thought I would touch on that. Based upon the land use and the lot sizes that will be required here, that's about where we see this coming in. tried to choose photos from homes that kind of fall into that bracket. All these homes are homes we've built probably within the last 12 to 18 months. That's it. With respect to the photos, just again, thank you for letting me present those. I thought that might help dispel some ideas people may have as to what could potentially be there, so I thought that might be helpful. I hope it was. There are some other comments that we heard throughout the course of the roughly 5 hours of public comment that we were able to take in that I wanted to address. One was with respect to the sale of the property and that there was some sort of bidding war for the property or something of that nature, and that's just not accurate. The Pohl family had farmed this property for many, many years, multiple generations. In 2018, roughly 2018-19, they decided they could not do it profitably anymore. At that point in time, they leased the farm to a larger blueberry operation. Contemplated the sale of the property at the time. They could not come to an agreement on the price. However, in that 5-year lease, they had agreed to what's called a first right of refusal, which gives that farmer the right to buy the property before anyone else can buy the property. That right of first refusal had to be released before we could purchase the property. They gave the farmer an opportunity to buy it. They signed a document releasing the right to do so, and from that point forward, we came to an agreement to buy the property. So we wanted to address that. There were no other farmers that expressed an interest in purchasing the farms. There were comments pertaining to the additional acreage that is contained in the rezoning request. I want to be clear that we own 97 acres roughly of that 250 that are contained in the rezoning request. And Lucas touched on this in his memo as well, but our request was specific to the 97 acres we own. The township, in an interest of consistency, which again was stated in Lucas's memo, determined it made sense to add the additional acreage. We have no opposition to their request being specific to our 97 and potentially removing the other acreage from the request. That would allow the other landowners to potentially submit future rezoning requests if they desire to do so. There were some comments with respect to infrastructure. Who pays for the infrastructure for these projects when they're built? Water, sewer, storm, roads. We go through a lengthy design approval process with all that infrastructure. We fund the construction of that infrastructure, and then we pay fees to connect to that infrastructure. After we complete the construction of the water and sewer, it's turned over, given to the township at no charge, and we do pay a connection fee, just like any other builder would in the township, to connect to that public infrastructure. So just wanted to be clear on that. The master plan and future land use map revision process. This was, there were some suggestions that this was somewhat done with, specifically for this property. This was a 2-year process that started before we were even talking to the Pohl family about buying this property. The township reviewed the entire future land use map and went through a lengthy engineering and infrastructure study completed by the township's engineering firm. That resulted in significant changes to the future land use map, as you probably are all aware by now. Residential land uses were focused in areas that could support that use. Access to utility and road infrastructure were key criteria in this process, and the rural residential areas grew substantially as a result of that. And Ron mentioned this too, but rural residential designation grew from 361 acres to 982. Land slated for medium density residential, which is what this land is slated for, decreased. It went from 956 to 335 acres. So the feedback that the township received with respect to how they wanted to see land use patterns going forward was responded to in their future land use map changes. That represents a reduction of 621 acres that were slated and are slated now for medium density residential. What is the definition of medium density residential land use? The master plan defines that as it's intended for single family uses primarily served with public water and public sanitary sewer. Development in the R2 district will be formed into walkable neighborhood patterns, served with sidewalks, connections to adjacent residential communities, bike paths, and other open space opportunities. The 97 acres we have and are requesting the R2 medium density residential zoning on clearly meet this entire definition. They have access to public water, have access to public sewer. They will be connected and walkable to, neighborhood internally and serve as sidewalks, and will connect to adjacent residential communities in most directions. And does have access to bike paths. Not only will we have our own internal open space, which is part of the requirement going through planned unit development process, but also have great connectivity to other parks and nearby open spaces via bike paths or short drive. Again, based upon the township definition of medium density residential, I don't think you can find a parcel of land that is more well suited than this one. Rezoning approval criteria statements are listed in Article 1, Section 109B7, which we're all now really familiar with, much more so than we were a few months ago. We are required to respond to each one of those. And I did so in writing, and all that was submitted to the township, but I'm going to try to go through those briefly. Letter A, whether there are changed conditions in the community that have occurred since the property was originally zoned warranting the rezoning. Yes, residential growth has occurred around the property. Master plan and future land use maps have been updated, identifying this area as medium density residential. B, whether the property is reasonably able to be used as zoned, and whether the property can be reasonably used under the proposed zoning. The agricultural use here no longer makes sense. Setting aside the fact that it was no longer economically viable for them to continue farming based upon a number of factors inclusive of international competition, the farmer also told me he has dealt with not problems, but challenges with the growth that has occurred around his farm. That's the whole reason the Right to Farm Act came to be in the first place. He's told me he had people asking him, when are you fertilizing? Why are you fertilizing? The wind's blowing the wrong direction. Noise, just when you start to have residential growth around a large tract of farmland, there can be some consternation between those two uses. He was experiencing some of that in addition to the economic challenges. C, whether there are other areas of the community that are better suited and planned for the proposed zoning. Based upon the current master plan and land use plan, this specific area is one of few places in the township that can support the need for medium residential land use. Pretty evidenced by the fact that the acreage allocated to each use changed dramatically, and this is one of the few that remain medium density. D, whether the rezoning is consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map of the Spring Lake Township Master Plan. Rezoning matches the land use designation contained in the Township Master Plan. E, whether the rezoning is compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features given uses permitted in this proposed zoning district. All these features were contemplated by the township engineer during the master plan review process. There will also be extensive design review and approval process involving a myriad of various governmental agencies before anything can be constructed. This happens not only for the design of the overall community, but each and every phase that's constructed goes through significant review and approval processes. And our engineer, Don from Excel, can explain that probably better than I can. F, whether the property is compatible with all the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district and with the surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impact to the environment, density, nature of the use, traffic impact, aesthetics, and infrastructure. Again, this sort of stuff is considered during the master plan review and future land map revision process. Many areas were determined to be incompatible with this sort of use and were returned to rural residential uses on the land use map for that reason. It was determined this land was an area that was compatible for this medium density residential land use. This project will require almost no tree clearing. It's not a forested wetland that we're trying to protect because it's got unique habitat. There will probably be a net gain of roughly 1,000 trees on these properties over the course of the development of this 97 acres, with our perimeter landscaping efforts and the landscaping that occurs on each and every property in the project. There's a traffic study that is currently underway. Any and all public infrastructure improvements that are required will be paid for by the developer, and I mentioned that earlier, the water, sewer, storm, road construction, etc. G, whether there is capacity of township infrastructure and services sufficient to accommodate the uses permitted in the requested district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the township and its residents. Yes, capacity of township infrastructure was part of the engineering review process. It was determined that infrastructure was sufficient in this area and that capacity existed to allow this land to become medium density residential. H, whether there is capacity of the street system to safely and efficiently accommodate expected traffic generated by uses permitted in the requested zoning district. The traffic engineer from the Ottawa County Road Commission has already confirmed and commented on the fact that there is generally adequate capacity for the handling of the additional traffic that this community will generate. A traffic study is required and has already been ordered. The scope and content of that study are dictated by the Road Commission. We don't get to choose what data we collect and how it's presented. That is dictated by a governmental agency, being the county. Progressive AE is doing a traffic study, and it's in process. I don't know exactly what will be done, but it will be provided as part of the process. Whether the rezoning would support a rational and sequential development pattern, keeping potential development near existing development and infrastructure, avoiding leapfrog type development. The land is adjacent to existing development and infrastructure. The land has access to all the infrastructure contemplated in the township definition of medium density residential land. To the best of our ability, that's how we would respond to those comments. I'm going to let Don come up and maybe comment more eloquently than I am capable of with respect to stormwater, all those things, some of the council for respect to runoff and that stuff. So thank you, and let Don Group and Excel Engineering.
Good evening, as Mike has stated. I'm Don Group with Excel Engineering. I think Ron kind of mentioned that when he was explaining the process that the Planning Commission deals with in rezoning, and that there's a strategic process in place, that the ordinances have been developed to protect how property gets developed. And once the rezoning is set and we have the parameters to start our conceptual designs, that's where the engineering becomes foremost as a process to develop the project with all the components that we need to keep in mind as we develop the property. As part of our conceptual design, once the zoning is in place, we approach all the various agencies and pretty much pick their brain and get an understanding of the perimeter of not only just the property but the surrounding areas. They historically have information available if there's concerns for off-site drainage that we need to be aware of in our design. So we'll meet with township staff and their consultants. We'll meet with the Road Commission and the Water Resources Commission, and also preliminary discussions with Eagle as appropriate for any areas that are regulated by them. Also, it's very important to formulate a design team that has expertise in various characteristics that the property may have, and we would put a team together of environmental consultants, wetland consultants, hydrogeologists, geotechnical engineers, traffic engineers, landscape design consultants, and civil design engineers. With the expertise and input from these various disciplines, all aspects of the site's specific characteristics will be studied to ensure the development, even in its preliminary stages of design, is well thought out prior to formal submittal of a preliminary plan to the township and all the reviewing agencies. Once the formal preliminary plans are submitted, there will be opportunity for the public to review these plans and offer comments very similar to this present rezoning process. Following the review process of the preliminary plan and securing all preliminary approvals required, the next step is to go through detailed construction plans, designing them and presenting them to the various agencies along with all supporting documentation, so that those agencies can do a thorough and detailed review of all the information provided. Along with the street utility design review, the stormwater management design, which was mentioned quite often in the comments, and I appreciate the concern of the neighboring people about how drainage is impacted by development and how that's accommodated in the design. But that's closely looked at and reviewed by the Water Resources Office as well as EGLE where applicable. A number of comments made by the public specific to the two properties that Eastbrook is requesting to be rezoned has centered on the high water table condition and impact that development might have on adjacent properties. Our office has been part of developing many properties with similar characteristics and is familiar with what is required to ensure a proper design is incorporated into the development. As an engineering consultant that has worked for Eastbrook for over 45 years, we suggested they evaluate hydrology early in the process. And with that, they brought on Lakeshore Environmental. Wells have been monitoring wells have been placed, and the water table has been monitored, so that we have a good baseline data which to use to create our stormwater management and to ensure that development, both people within the development and surrounding the development are adequately protected. Eastbrook understands that the successful design of the development requires a lot of upfront work, and that is why they invest their resources securing the team of consultants previously mentioned early in the process to ensure everything is addressed during the preliminary plan and design. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just try and wrap it up quickly. We've all been here a long time tonight. But I'll just add in a bit. I've been in business for 51 years, 45, in the last 45 years at Eastbrook. I've learned that as a developer, it's our job to create a beautiful community, to build attractive, functional, and energy-efficient homes that people want to live in. We need to be respectful of the land that we steward, and we do take that seriously. It is a stewardship issue as far as I'm concerned with every piece of property that we come in contact with. And we need to be considerate of the future homeowners we are also called to serve. On top of that, we need to build a neighborhood that, in this occasion, Spring Lake community will enjoy. We take all that very seriously, and we will do what is necessary to make this a neighborhood we are all proud of. We also have to listen to the concerns of the local homeowners. Our engineers, as well as Michael and I, have listened to the comments, and we intend to develop a community that takes into account these concerns and act upon them appropriately. We hope to provide a neighborhood that, for West Michiganders, people from Spring Lake, to choose to live in as they move up during their home ownership years, or to consider what they might better fit their empty nest. That's simply what we do. It's for people that are already living here, that are making housing decisions, that we create communities. The job we do in housing is not one we take lightly. I remind my team, probably once a week, that yes, we're building houses, but they become people's homes. Homes where life is shared. New babies come home to the needs of Christmas, birthdays, barbecues, and graduations. That's what people do in their homes. Probably everybody in this room remembers every home they've ever lived in. And so for us,
We're not just building a widget that people dispose of, not even a car that they like for a while, it smells new. But then again, we move on from that. A home is much different. It's important. And I think often we think of it as the American dream, or at least a big part of that American dream. By the way we design a neighborhood, we can make a difference in the joy of a young family, or the fun of active adults in their golden years. We intend to accomplish that. Now, I get that when I'm saying this, that many in the room will think it's self-serving, it's saying whatever it needs to say to get this approved. And I recognize that. I can also remember, I'm 73 now, I've done this a long time. I can remember when I was 25, lived in my first home, and people moved in, we developed this little field behind us, we moved into it. And I was disappointed, I was chagrined, I was frustrated with some of these people. So I understand that, I had those feelings as well. Maybe not I, but I became very good friends with those people. Ultimately, we made vacation together, our kids grew up until they moved on to Florida, but it was something so from that process, I just learned that it's okay for these people to be frustrated about this, and it's okay for them to be upset with me. I get that. I had those feelings. It's a very natural instinct to do that. So I just appreciate the comments and understand them. We are going to do our best, however, to create a place for people that have an opportunity to buy homes. And as Michael said, in this price point, it's $500,000 to $800,000. I'm actually disappointed that it's that high. I wish we could find ways to do it more cheaply. We just cannot. Because of that, we as a company have started our what we call Eastern Cares program, in which we're currently working with Bill Trotter, Inner City Christian Federation, Daily Promise, Community Rebuilders, Black River Outreach Ministry, getting to Habitat for Humanity as well, in which we're creating programs to build houses less expensively through with them. We think that's our responsibility. So we look forward to working with Spring Lake Township. We appreciate the deliberate and careful process, and we're just getting ready to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much. Okay, board members, questions?
I have one. Have you done the wetland delineations at all? Have you identified any wetlands yet, or is that process down the road?
We've done part of it. We've done the southern parcel, and there's a small amount of wetlands, so that's not unusual behind that. We've done that deliberately.
Leading question.
And the township's staff also review it, so we've done that. Not everything's completely started.
That's an accurate statement that Don Tilton, our township wetland consultant, did go out and inspect the wetland delineation on the southern parcel. There's one small identified wetland in the middle of that southern parcel. The northern parcel is not delineated. Township hasn't reviewed that at this point in time. But the general comment is that the two properties are very similar in nature, and the likelihood of significant wetlands on the site that would deter it from development
It was real short. You didn't miss anything anyway. I was throwing up in the lobby. From these? Mm-hmm. I talked to some really nice people though, and they've got them to join, and they're going to let their neighbors know, and we can put signs in their driveway and all sorts of things, so it was very valuable. Oh God, these people make me sick. He's going to take care of the community. Yeah. Christmas. Oh my God.
To reiterate what Mr. Bolchi explained.
Here we go.
Earlier is that each application needs to be reviewed objectively, regardless of who the applicant is. So everyone is afforded their
don't change the master plan to accommodate the person that asked for a rezone.
That opportunity. I do want to point out that while there are some pictures illustrating home designs and so on earlier.
Always make an excuse.
Home quality, both quality or architectural design is not part of this discussion this time. This is not a conditional rezoning. This is a request for street.
You know what? Next meeting we should put signs up.
And so architectural design and home style can be looked at as part of the PUD process that we follow the rezoning if it's approved. And getting into the PUD process and just helping everyone understand what happens after the rezoning if one were to occur. First of all, PUDs are heavily scrutinized.
He's
Very
making all these excuses.
process, very long process. Most PUD reviews take at least a year to get through. The Planning Commission and Township Board are multiple public hearings that are as part of that as well. I think any developer here in the township can attest to that. It's been through that process in recent years. PUDs, which is planned unit developments, require various amenities that include a minimum of 20% open space. There's a 50% tree canopy requirement. So it's like this one that we're looking at is going to go from blueberries to a significant amount of trees. That's at maturity, so obviously we'll need to grow. There's also a requirement for landscape buffers along county road frontages. These are
None of that's going to happen.
These are requirements within the PUD that help to create spaces and amenities that add value and desirability to
Oh, it adds value to the community. It adds value.
Spring Ridge.
Thanks.
So to reiterate, going back to the master plan process, there was a community input survey that was held, that was conducted as part of that process. There were public hearings, there were email blasts, there were Facebook posts. It was well over a 2-year process that occurred through that.
It obviously wasn't enough.
Planning and enabling at state of Michigan. So, finally, getting to the traffic has been a concern, and I have had communication with road capacity does exist in that area. However, additional studies would need to occur to fully understand if any intersection improvements would be required.
Yes.
So, obviously, the driveways for the entrance,
yes.
for the element, or let's say Van Wagner, 168, things of that nature, if there are any kind of upgrades that would be necessary. So, in getting into my report, we did try to.
That's your 3 minutes, buddy.
Were about the public, and traffic, noise, lighting, stormwater, hydrology, weapons, loss of wildlife, loss of work characters, overcrowding, crime, and property values. Some of those are fall within the review criteria, and some of them don't. So we try to look at the ones that do fall in the review criteria. I will mention that Dennis Burton from Spring Schools has been made aware of this and did note some comments and felt that the school district is actually the enrollment is lower than the
it's a lie.
Level is, so they have room for maybe another 100 students at this point in time, and they would adjust their out of district students as time went on, as if and when enrollment came for them. So I did want to touch
That's
on
a lie. 250 homes, 2 kids per home. That's about 100 kids. I know.
So I walked through the criteria in my report. We can walk through those again. I think that's important thing to do also a variety of considerations that have been offered for you guys to think about. One of the comments tonight was why isn't RR a consideration? The ag district and the rural residential district both have a 2-acre minimum lot size, so the zone change to RR would have much impact.
Yeah, you made sure of that.
Sorry.
You made sure of that.
Mr. Bocci, any comments or concerns about what I just said?
No concerns with what you said, no.
Here we go. Give us another lecture, why don't you, Ron?
We make a recommendation
Principal's
to
office.
our township board. And the township board is making their consideration of all recommendations. Demonstrating my ignorance here. There will be another public hearing, is that correct or no?
That's the problem. They don't have any idea what they're doing.
The township board has the right to call a public hearing. It is not required by statute, and generally governing body won't schedule a public hearing.
Okay, so I would like to consider each one of these items individually, like we just did for the previous agenda. So, Lucas, could you please start us off with number 8?
Absolutely. These are the review criteria, section 109B7 of the zoning ordinance, which have been in place since that was zoning ordinance was amended in 2010, so these criteria were incorporated at that time. Letter A, whether there are changed conditions in the community that have occurred since the property was originally zoned, warranting the rezoning request. Staff comment, there are more residential developments surrounding the proposed area for rezoning now than when this property was originally zoned. But I'll make an additional comment on that is that while the farm was in operation, owned by the Blue family, they requested that that area remain zoned back. And so that was honored by the township at that time because they knew they were in an area that they need that protection through the right farm. So, but the conditions have changed over the years in that area. B, whether the property is reasonably able to be used as, I'm sorry, you guys didn't develop a consensus.
Just a consensus on each one, but I would also like to state that
Here we go.
the old Woodbury farms are
Here we go.
surrounded by residential. And so as that has grown and filled in with homes, it becomes easier and easier to recognize this property as being natural for residential. So I'm agreeing with the staff comments. Do we have consensus on staff comment?
Yes, but also regularly, not with development.
The letter B, whether the property is reasonably able to be used as zoned and whether the property can be reasonably used under the proposed zoning. Staff comment, the property can be reasonably used as zoned and under the proposed zoning. However, the property will not be farmed in the future, so the ag zoning district does not seem to be the logical zoning district any longer.
Any other comments? Do we have consensus? C, please.
Letter C, whether there are areas of the community that are better suited and planned for the proposed zoning. Staff comment, there are some vacant areas in the eastern area of the township zoned R2, but they are not necessarily better suited than the subject location. Many of these sites are also in a wooded and natural state. We did talk about road capacity a little bit. We talked about one thing we haven't talked about is access to highways. So there is access to 31 close by, and
limited, and we would stand to lose some of our natural resources of the area. I think this area is uniquely suited for this development.
Jesus Christ.
So I agree with staff's comment and our consensus.
You guys are fucking nuts.
Letter D, whether the rezoning is consistent with the goals, policy, and future land use map of the Spring Lake Township Master Plan. Staff comment that proposed zoning is consistent with the master plan. Letter E, whether the rezoning is compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features given uses
God damn it, why does it do that?
zoning district. Staff comment.
Just trust it or something.
The site likely has a high water table which would require a
I didn't hear a word that you said. Not one word.
as required by the Adams County Water Resources Department.
Do we have consensus? Next, please.
Whether the property, letter F, whether the property is compatible with all the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district and with the surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, and infrastructure. Staff comment. The proposed zoning is generally compatible as the area is surrounded by residential development, a variety of densities. Municipal water and sewer are available to this region, and the local county roads appear to have additional capacity as recent developments have had limited impact. The applicant's property also has access to numerous roadways and will provide street connectivity. A traffic study will be completed as part of the development review process, which may result in the need for street or intersection improvements.
They've already decided. They're already putting in the street signs. They're putting in the street signs.
So I'd like to add a comment to that with wetlands. This area is actually quite unique in its lack of wetlands as you look across our township. One of the criteria that we were using was
this jerk.
When we are looking at residential growth, how do we protect our wetlands as we're allowing that growth?
This guy's unreal.
We tried signs, we tried all kinds of identifications.
Yes, right. That's because you mitigated into a corner lot somewhere.
Start to begin
fuck you.
Crowd in that space. So logically, the only way that you can really prevent that is lower density in those areas. So when we look across the township, this area had some of the fewest recognized wetlands in the rest of the township. So I would suggest that it is also uniquely favorable
Jesus Christ.
to protecting what wetlands we do have.
You're an asshole.
So that comment along with this path.
Just for purposes of discussion, could we add just that, as you all know, planning commission at the township board, the township itself goes beyond state law regulation of wetlands. We regulate smaller wetlands than the state does, and we regulate the buffers around wetlands, which the state does not. So the fact that we can do that, this area would be uniquely unaffected by wetlands is
Are you fucking nuts?
emphasized by the fact that we go farther than the state does and we can regulate wetlands.
But you don't do it. Jesus, forget about it. They're just going to pass it. They don't care.
Letter G, whether there is capacity of township infrastructure and services sufficient to accommodate the uses permitted in the requested district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of township or its residents. Staff comment the township is invested in an updated fire station on the west side, the township
Holy
anticipates growth
shit.
in the area.
Who is this?
Spring Lake Township Fire Department also
Miss
has
Elvis's
full-time
dad.
firefighters on staff. Municipal utilities are also available through.
Wait, we'll talk later. Okay, I'm not tracking. Fuck.
I'll add that this area seems to be legally
Fucking ass.
soil that can handle engineering. So if those comments on the reading of the staff, and like consensus.
Whether there is capacity of the street system to safely and efficiently accommodate the expected traffic generated by uses permitted in the requested zoning district. We've covered this one quite a bit tonight, but additional studies may be required to fully understand traffic impacts that will be generated by the zoning. We've received input from Ottawa County, the Ottawa County Road Commission, since I wrote this, I've indicated there is capacity. This may require some additional improvements.
You fucking dicks. They're
Whether
just
or not-
sheep.
Whether the rezoning would support a rational and sequential development pattern, keeping potential development near existing development and infrastructure, avoiding leapfrog type development.
Fuck you.
Any comments? Do we have consensus? Do we have consensus?
I'm sorry, but I didn't read the staff comments. Flip the page.
No, you don't need to.
So basically,
You don't need to read the staff comments.
Property, as do other support elements, including parks, bike paths, and building changes.
I can't believe Harry's doing this to his own community.
Through the considerations as well. So, just throwing this out there as you get further into deliberation.
Throwing this out there.
Things to think about, running through the list of options. So one of those is, number one, which is rezone the 250 acres plus or minus RR ag areas to R2 as noticed. Number two is rezone only the 97 acres owned by P5. That was part of the original application that started this considerations. Remove the township initiated area that was not requested by those property owners. Frankly, I think that leaving that area zone are minimal impacts. It's a residential zoning district. It has a 2-acre minimum lot size. The advantages to RR is that they're allowed to have larger accessory buildings. And you're also allowed to have short-term rentals. In the R2, if you have water and sewer, you can go down as far as 12,000 square foot lots, so you have potential divide ability on your lot.
He's such a liar.
The potential to see more value from your lot if desired. R2
Such a liar. After you spend $15,000.
So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages of that decision. Number three, rezone to R1 instead of R2, resulting in less density. The lot size requirement for R1 is 15,000, and for R2 is 12,000. And so your base density within the future development is based on that lot size and the development plan that's provided by the applicant. So you have a potential of it's not a huge reduction in density, but there would be a reduction in density if you went to R1. R1 is also zoned across the street to the east, east of West Spring Lake Road around Spring Lake. So there would be consistency there to think about.
This guy's an asshole.
As noted in the ag and RR district, is have a 2-acre minimum lot size, so rezoning RR would be a minimal impact on the request.
That's a lie.
And so option 4, the last option would be to deny the rezoning request. So, obviously, with any of these decisions, I certainly recommend the township attorney prepare a resolution in whichever way you want to go. And just leave it to you for more deliberation.
I do try to formulate what it is, put it in a way that can be communicated. You know, yes, thank you. The R1, or like the idea of 1,500 square foot minimum lot sizes, only adds to the cost. Astounding the cost increase in materials, building supplies, and so on like that over the last 10 years. I'm just amazed.
Oh, for God's sake.
I have ruled that out just because I think that this man even more exclusively and eliminates more possible homeowners from our country.
Oh my God.
I like the R2. I really like it when Mr. McGraw mentioned to us in the meeting or 2 ago, he was looking at 2 to 3 houses per acre, which averages out to 2.5 per acre. Verbal representation gets away from me. But also when I look at where we started with about a year and a half ago,
Right.
we have recommended the 97 acres, not 2. And I like the concept of looking at that original 97 acres and
Fuck you.
let pieces fall over the years. If the other farmers that own that property want to then do something different with it, we give them that. So my feeling is change go back to the original zoning request and look at rezoning 97 acres.
I am agreeing with Jack on that. I think adding the acres in to rezone the entire area isn't necessary at this time and could happen in time.
Of course, they could because you wanted to.
So Kelly, I'm not going to disagree, but I do like the consistency of the whole area. When we look at rezoning the entire area. I also think that just looking at the 97 acres is a good idea. I'm torn between R1 and R2. My perspective for most of the people in the audience is that if the development does ever go in the east, the differentiation in R1 is going to be hard to tell from the existing that's there. But I do think if we're talking consistency, there's R1 right across the street. I would entertain R1 as well, but knowing that R2 could still be.
I think this area is unique in its abilities to support R2, more so than anywhere else in our township. We have the ability to create something nice. We have the ability to provide young families with the ability to move into our community. The diversity of our residents that give us the strength that we have in our community. It is those younger taxpayers coming in that's going to help us in the future with maintaining our infrastructure, maintaining our community.
He's fucking nuts.
So I do like the idea also of
get his ass out of there.
getting this back to the original 97 acres we were considering, but I am more inclined to go to R2 than R1.
You do that, sir.
So with that consideration,
Because
I would entertain
they're all assholes. They just think they can control the whole community.
Could I just maybe point out?
Oh God, here we go.
Our recommendation will encompass the entire 250 acres. We understand that. I want to make sure the audience understands that. We can split our recommendation and say we recommend proceeding with this, we recommend not proceeding with something else. Either way, it's a recommendation to the township board. The reason that the other 150 acres came into play was primarily that the township board in the past has said, don't piecemeal us, give us the entire area.
That's because you accommodated Eastbrook.
The entire area, just differing recommendations. If you proceed that way, the township board will still have the option of following your recommendation entirely or revising your recommendation if it so desires. So it'll still be in play. The township board can still decide how it wants to proceed in spite of your recommendation or in total agreement with your recommendation. Make sense, Jack?
Jack's too stupid to understand.
Tell me.
See?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
I played in a band for 30 years.
Shut up.
You want to use a mic?
No.
You would think that, slower. I don't know if the consensus, but I'm sensing straight that we get a little bit smaller area. You were talking 250.
Well, so if the planning commission potentially, based on the discussion, could consider a motion
If they hadn't changed the master plan, we wouldn't be here.
Consider a resolution which would recommend to the township board that it rezone the 97 acres to R2 and that the other 150 neighborhood areas, area acres stay zoned as is and be considered on a case-by-case basis when landowners / developers want to pursue something different. The master plan still calls what it calls for, R2, but you could make a recommendation of the township board, proceed with the 97, keep the other 150 as is. And the township board might say totally yes. Township board might totally say no on everything. Township board may totally say yes on 250 acres to R2.
And by the way, if we do a resolution, and this does get to the board, there will be normal board, there's always public comment, is there not?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so there could be more input yet from the community.
And there was surprised if there wasn't.
It's not funny. Can't hear you.
I am asking for, I am the chairman, and I am not going to make.
Could we make the motion can be pretty simple. I think what you need to decide is the motion needs to designate whether you want to proceed with R1 or R2 and whether you want to proceed with 97 or 250 acres. But you're not making that decision now. You're giving direction to Lucas and me to do a report with a resolution to give to you to either totally reject next month, adopt, revise, whatever you want to do. You just need to give us direction. So your direction to us would be to proceed with preparing a resolution to rezone 97 acres to R2 and to leave the balance alone, potentially. If that's it's not a decision to do that. It is direction to prepare a resolution for you to consider at next month's meeting.
And that's the motion I would like to make, is to direct them to do that, and just look at the 97 acres. See where it goes.
Okay, so we have a motion. Okay, so we have a motion, and need support.
Support.
Motion and support. Roll call for Perry. That was a yes. Russ?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Myself? Yes. So we are asking that we draft our resolution for consideration next month.
Correct. Basically, the motion is simply direction to staff to do some work and bring it back to you.
We do have another item on our agenda. I understand that you have patiently waited here for a long time. If you so wish to leave, you're more than welcome to at this time. Or you just continue on.
Thank you.